Hi, I'm Mike Dana with Light Reading, and we're here at the big 5G event. It's the first day of the show, lots of stuff going on, lots of talk about 5G, Open RAN, and here we've got Sam from Paradise Mobile, and you are right in the middle of all that. You're right in the middle of 5G, you're right in the middle of Open RAN. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit, like give us a little quick history on what Paradise Mobile is, where you guys are working, what the overall plan is.
Absolutely. So we're a new MNO in the Caribbean region. We've got regulatory approval in 2 markets, Bermuda and Cayman, for this year. We are, a pan-Caribbean play over the next 5 years. That's the vision. That's the strategy. We are deploying a 5G network that's Open RAN, deployed with Amazon AWS on island. So it's all software, commodity hardware. I mean, the only proprietary hardware I have is a radio, which they haven't figured out how to get rid of yet.
Yeah, not yet, right? And you and I first spoke, I think, either earlier this year or last year, and you said, yeah, I'm going to build a network in Bermuda. And here you are, like literally a few months later, and you've got that network up and running now across a certain number of sites.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll have island-wide coverage in a few weeks.
Few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, but for context, for those that don't know Bermuda, I mean, it's 22 square miles. I mean, it doesn't even qualify as a cluster for most larger jurisdictions. But of course, I mean, from the features and VAS and core, I mean, you're deploying the same full-featured functionality, even though you don't have as many sites.
Yeah. And so, as we've talked before, the goal of the network is obviously to offer service in Bermuda to people who may live there or be visiting. But also, it's to act as sort of a testing ground, right, for new 5G services. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I mean, we're part of a bigger movement in Bermuda. So context, the current premier and the current government have visions to diversify the economy, which is heavily based on financial services, simply because they're not big job creators in the future.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique place. It's a very, GDP per capita is, top 3 in the world. You've got a lot of unique aspects that make Bermuda a perfect sandbox for next-gen technology. If you start looking at the personas, I mean, we mentioned GDP or travel or education, but even something as simplistic as phones, you've got 55% Apple, 37% Samsung, there's 95+% of your base that are models very similar to any North American or Western European, neighborhood. And that becomes a very interesting use case because you're not just doing technical POCs, you're actually validating market penetration, feedback, and all the other pieces on what we believe is the most scalable, flexible, most agile, advanced 5G network that exists.
Right, and your goal there for Paradise Mobile is, obviously to offer services, but it's also what, to develop specific 5G applications and sort of technological approaches that you can then sell to other network operators or other vendors around the world, right? This
Absolutely.
is sort of a real world testbed.
Absolutely, and I mean, even here at this conference yesterday, had some really interesting conversations with some of the bigger tier ones here, and everyone is trying to figure out what that next killer app or how to monetize 5G at scale. I think really it's who can run the most experiments in the shortest amount of time, because you're gonna, baseball analogy, if you want to bat 300, you got to strike out 7 out of 10 times.
All right, but you want to bat 300 with the network, though. That's the goal.
I mean, and the network's got about 100%, okay. But the services and the products, this is really a testing ground where we can try segmentations, we can try even at scale. There's so many opportunities having the full network coverage and building it as a greenfield operator, from beyond just the transport layer. We can be the data lake for all these other, public-private sector partnerships where they want to be able to innovate in an AWS cloud with all the extensions very quickly. And I mean, as the operator, we have most of that data already.
Right. So, okay, so here's the question that we've arrived to, the question that I really want to have you talk about a little bit, which is the concept of developing for a 5G network. And the reason is because here at the big 5G show, we've had a lot of sessions already. It's only the first day of the show, but we've already had a lot of sessions talking about how do developers build applications for the actual network, not a thing that I run on my phone, not that, but something that would actually be installed into the network that a developer would build. In fact, just this morning we had a speaker from Ericsson come and talk about, that's the reason behind their acquisition of Vonage. It was so that developers could develop, the first thing is they're going to start with is a quality of service application that would actually be a network application. So you're doing similar stuff. And how are developers going to work with you guys?
That's a great question. So for us, partnerships is key. I mean, we're a small company, we can't do everything. So we're actually licensing the Amazon stack from bare metal up on island in our data center. So whether it's underneath our cell site, it's the same Amazon stack. Whether it's in our data centers or public cloud, it's the same stack. And then adding extensions, there's a roadmap there to what features we want to enable. But right now, we're the only tenant of that Amazon instance.
Right.
But think about the opportunities if you are familiar with developing the Amazon AWS ecosystem, which is the biggest cloud in the world. What can you actually enable to build network-aware applications? And where the light bulb moment actually went off for me was one of the first times we visited Bermuda. There's an annual tech conference there where you've got hundreds of different startups and entrepreneurs that are coming to be part of the ecosystem, although most of them are not domiciled there. And when I asked a very interesting company out of California, actually a drone company, why aren't you domiciled here? The conversation was, well, great weather, lifestyle, tax neutral, jurisdiction friendly. I'm like, you're selling me. I asked, why are you not here?
Yeah.
And they said, well, the plumbing's not here. And I said, well, what do you need? And they said, honestly, we've got incredible tech. We've built our drone from the ground up with NVIDIA GPUs to have more compute capacity. We've got LiDAR that can do 70 billion, equivalent to a Tesla from a sensor perspective, but we still need edge compute for some use cases. And some of those are critical that I actually need them in fog or in emergency situations. And the challenge that they had is they went to the incumbents, and this is, not a Bermuda specific problem, but a lot of legacy providers buy closed systems, closed boxes. They don't have access to change anything in that box. So they said, here's what I want. I'll pay you whatever you want per meg when I'm flying, but I need sub-millisecond delay because there's a difference between crashing into this building or not. And the challenge with the incumbents is they said, guys, this is an RFP where I have to figure out how to add an additional network layer and then work backwards through all these legacy systems, including our BSS systems. This is probably 18 months and maybe a couple $1 million for you to run an experiment. Thank you, no business case, go away.
Yeah.
So for us, the light bulb moment was the fact that we are partnering not just with the right platforms, but even the vendors. Mavenir is most of our VNFs and core. The difference between, Ericsson and the Nokias and Huawei's make incredibly good, solid hardware, and they are market leaders in what they do. The challenge is those guys are actually hardware companies trying to get into software. And Mavenir is actually a software company that now with a couple $1 billion in Fusion is getting into hardware.
Right.
And you start seeing it, transparently, we spent a year and a half because Open RAN wasn't ready in 2019 with all the bands that we wanted. We spent a long time doing due diligence and commercial negotiations with one of the big guys. And, they would use words like virtualization. But we're a small network. I said, I don't want to support 100 SKUs.
Yeah.
So when you talk about virtualization, what are you actually talking? What does that mean to you? They're like, because I want one commodity hardware everywhere. They said, well, your IMS needs to be on HP, but your SMSC needs to be on Dell. I'm like, but you're the same company. That's a different business unit. So I'm like, you're selling me software and hardware. This is not what virtualization is.
Yeah.
So, a lot of them are see the writing on the wall. Here the ship has sailed on Open RAN. Everyone is talking about Open RAN. Every vendor is aligned and bragging about how much they're contributing to the standards. But the challenge is, as a large company, how long is it going to take you to be able to compete like a software company that from day one is microservice? It's not enough to just disaggregate. It's your whole architecture to be able to do those things, to say, guys, I want to write an API that enables these three things and I need these fields passed into me. And whether we're putting a wrapper around it or whether we're working with the vendors directly in some cases, this should be hours and days. And if you don't have the right vendor, you're literally waiting for a roadmap that could be quarters, which is the same problem that we've had for years, but you're now just calling it something different.
And so this is a network that, it's ready to go, right? You've got the radios up, you've got the AWS infrastructure, you've got the Mavenir software running. Like, it's pretty much ready to go now.
Absolutely. I mean, we're doing testing, and I mean, the performance that we're getting, I mean, we've got some of the most advanced massive MIMO radios in the world. We're deploying them before other vendors from Avenir, so a little bit of R&D. Guinea pig, I wish some of that wasn't true for us, but
it's hard to be first.
It's hard to be first, but I mean, we've got great partners. It's the ecosystem. You can't do this alone, especially as a startup, especially as a greenfield in a small market. 90% of the value is that glue, and that their culture, their values, their operating models are actually aligned to the way you want to operate. And it's not a sales guy selling you 14 siloed business unit products trying to glue it together.
So last question for you is, it sounds like you need someone there to really report on it every day and live in Bermuda, probably in a van on the beach, and really get into that, probably for a solid 6 months during the summer. Don't you think that is a necessary?
I think we need absolute coverage. So when's that happening, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's head out. All right, Sam, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.